Hey there everyone, welcome back to the Dan Cave and welcome to another video build series. So in this video build series I'm going to be building the NuNu 24 scale Audi A4 from the 96 British Touring Car Championship, and I'm going to be building Frank Biela's championship winning car. So this kit was eagerly anticipated by me because that Audi was probably hands down my favourite from the Super Touring era. Probably because always been an Audi fan dating back to kind of rallying in the 80s and the Quattro and stuff, and seeing this A4 on British Touring Car Championship was just struck a chord with me at the time. Loved the livery, the silver with the red Audi logo along the side. You can kind of see it on my desktop behind me. So easily one of my favorites from that era. So in my last bench update, I kind of mentioned that I thought this would probably be a one part covering the entire build because it's a curbside kit. But when I've been editing, I realized actually, no, it probably needs a little bit more than that. So it's probably going to be 3 parts. But going to be 3 small parts. So part 1 today, right now, if you're watching, part 1 is going to cover the bodywork, chassis and running gear. So that's going to be that kind of bit. Part 2 is going to cover the interior because there's quite a bit of work in the interior, and then part 3 is going to be a kind of final assembly and final put together of the kit. So for part 1 today, it's going to be bodywork and running gear. So if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. If you like the video, pop a like down below, thumbs up thing, you know the drill. And if you have any comments, feel free to leave a comment. So without further ado, let's head on over to the bench and let's see how I get on with this Audi A4. Over we go. So as I said, this was eagerly anticipated, so eagerly anticipated that I also bought the detail upset for it as well. So breaking into the box, kind of standard from NuNu. Body looks good. Just checking out where any of the mold seam lines are. Rear bumper comes as a separate part, and first step is start taking parts off the sprue. So basically trying to get anything that needs to be body colored, get all those parts together. Although I do break down the painting a little bit. The interior tub's going to be body colored as well, as is the chassis. We'll get onto that in the later parts. So first and foremost, I'm actually marking out with a Sharpie where those mold lines are. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. I have decided to do it this time. So in addition to that, I do have the detail set, so the bonnet pins, the molded ones, can be removed. So using God hand chisel heads just to remove the bulk of the plastic, and then part of the sanding process using some UMP thinny sticks, I'm going to remove any of those seam lines and any remaining marks from those bonnet pins. So working my way around the body using the UMP sanders and then using the UMP sanding sponge just to finish off that work. And once I'm done removing the seam line, I'm just going to open up the panel gaps a little bit using a pointed tool. That also helps remove any sanding dirt and grit from those panel lines. So the bumper is going to be popped on now. The chassis will fit using the white cap Tamiya glue just for the 2 main attachment points, and then using some Tamiya extra thin just to use the capillary action to run in around the rest of the bumper. So I also assemble the roll cage at this stage, assemble it in situ on the chassis. Now, I did miss a part on the roll cage, wasn't in the instructions. Luckily enough, comment from Thomas at Building on a Budget did mention it and reminded me to go and look for it. And of course, once everything is prepped, it's time to head on over to the spray booth and start priming everything in UMP black, which is shot through the UMP apex at about 30 psi. So I normally lay down about 2 to 3 coats, depending on what the next colour is going to be. But I think for the black, I think I'll lay down probably about 3 coats on the body, making sure I get good coverage, make sure I get all the angles covered as well. And as you can probably see in the video, I seem to have a little bit of fibre stuck to the roof. So once it's cured, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a soft sanding back, just to knock down any high spots. Once I'm happy with the primer, it's then a case of using the A4 silver paint, which came from Zero, which lays down absolutely fine. So plenty of light coats, build up coverage, and there'll be no issues whatsoever. So I think I end up with about 4 or 5 coats of the silver. As you can see, after that first coat, it's looking okay, but it is a bit patchy on the upper surfaces. And then changing the direction of which I'm spraying as well, just to make sure I don't have any obvious stripes on the roof. But again, if you build it up in plenty of layers, that will be absolutely fine. And I think by the time I get to coat number 4 or 5, that paint is looking spot on. A few little dust specks, but they'll easily knock back with a little bit of a rub with some 3000 3M sponges. So once the paint has had all its curing time, it's time to start the decal process. As you can see, I'm going to start with the big Audi logos, but I'm also going to trim out as much of the carrier film as possible. So let's speed up the footage with a little bit of background music, and let's see how the decaling process goes. So once the decals are complete and cured, it's time to move on to the 2K process. So using Gravity Spain's 2K, standard mix 3:1:1, and there's going to be 3 coats laid down. So the first coat is a tack coat. So you're basically just laying down a coat that will act as a kind of base coat to make sure subsequent layers stick properly. So again, for a body, just giving it a brush over, an anti-static brush, remove any last bits of dust, and then I can start to lay down the tack coat. Trying to get into all the angles, make sure the 2K wraps around under the arches as well. And then work my way around the body, just building up that first initial light tack coat. So you're just looking for basically what I like to call a kind of speckled pebble dash finish. You're not looking for a pure gloss at this stage. So you leave that aside for 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can come back in for coat number 2. So coat number 2 is going to be the first actual gloss coat. So you're laying down a reasonably heavy coat to get a nice clear gloss finish. Once again, speed the footage up a little bit so we can see the whole way around the body. Multiple passes. Do the sides. Start from the back, work my way forward, then start from the front, and then meet at the top of the bonnet. So once that second coat is down, again 10 to 15 minutes, and then I can come back in for coat number 3, and this is going to be the final gloss coat. So at this stage, you're looking to make sure you have no orange peel, a perfectly clear gloss finish, hopefully no dust or debris in it at this stage. And again, speed up the footage so I can work my way around the body. Basically same process, both sides, front and back, and then across the top of the roof. And so far so good. That's looking spot on. That can be then set aside for a good 3 to 4 days to let it cure fully. Longer, even better. It makes polishing, can make polishing easier to do it a bit earlier, but then it can leave micro scratches as it still takes quite a long time to cure fully. But as ever, let's move on to the chassis and running gear. It's the usual process, starting off cleaning up any seam lines, removing any parts you need from the sprue, in this case the exhaust, which is basically a molded one-piece exhaust. All of the tips are separate. Any of the subframe parts as well that are shown. And using the Tamiya sprue cutters just to remove any of those parts from the sprue. So UMP sanding sticks are my go-to for cleaning up seam lines. They tend to swipe them away very, very easily. As you can see, once the parts are cleaned up, it's back to find any more parts we need. In this case, the steering rack, we'll call it. For any of the smaller parts, I like to use a file to get in around any of the little edge parts. In this case, it's one of the suspension components. And brake discs and calipers are molded as a single part, so they need a little bit of cleanup as well. Just where the sprue attachment points are, and that's basically it. So once all the cleanup is done, it's back over to spray booth and priming stuff once again in UMP black primer. Laying down a couple of coats on the chassis just to get that full coverage. That, of course, will be painted in body color. But, of course, before we get to that stage, we need to prime it first. So, as you can see, the UMP black primer lays down absolutely spot on. You don't need to hose it on, just a couple of nice, even coats, and it will cover very, very well. It will cure overnight, and you can put lacquer paints on top of it, absolutely no problem. Same process with the exhaust and all the other running gear components. Pretty much everything is primed in UMP black. Once that black has cured for a day or so, at least 24 hours, it's time to come back in with the body color, which is the Zero Paints A4 Silver, and a couple of coats of that to just cover the chassis as well. As you can see, that's laid down absolutely fine. It's quite a nice high shine finish as well. So this is not going to be clear coated as it is on the underside, but it is in body color nonetheless. So the roll cage with the missing part now attached. So that was primed in UMP black. I've masked up a few areas which from reference photos will remain as black, and then the remainder gets sprayed in the body color silver once again. The exhaust is getting airbrushed in Alclad Pale Burnt Metal, I believe is the color I've used this time. Again, just adds that nice contrast difference on the underside of the car. Brake discs and calipers are airbrushed in Alclad Steel, as are the hubs, I think. The hubs might be in aluminium. Now it looks like it's Alclad Steel again. Using a slightly different aluminium color for the fuel tank. At least I think it's the fuel tank. There is some carbon decals in the detail upset for this part as well. And then the steering rack is getting sprayed in Alclad Gunmetal. So the Alclad Gunmetal is quite a bluish metallic color. It looks really good. And then I'm using some Pro Scale Titanium Silver for the suspension struts. So they are now getting masked up because the actual spring part is going to be sprayed in red. And I think I've used Revell acrylic red for the actual spring part of the suspension struts. Also using the wonderful D-Space circle cutter just to basically cut out some mass templates for the center of the brake discs. Yeah, so it's just the center of the brake discs that I'm masking off. As you can see, suspension struts are getting airbrushed in a Revell red. I think it's number 34 red. Yes, it is, because they are on the right hand side. A couple of coats of that. And then the center of the brake discs is being sprayed in, I think it's titanium gold from ProScale. So all those parts are left to cure. And then there's a few carbon decals to go on the underside from the detail upset. Again, there's a lot of carbon detail which comes with a detail upset. A lot of it is on the underside or the interior, not highly visible areas, but as is always the case with us modelers, we'll know it's there. So once again, the decals laid in absolutely fine from NuNu. A little bit of heat, a little bit of application of UMP decal solvents. And then, of course, one of the other additions from the detail set is the PE brake discs. So the original discs, a couple of dots of super glue or CA glue, and the disc parts from the PE sheet can just be popped in place. They do look very, very good in PE. And with the style of wheel on this car, they'll be reasonably visible. So it's a nice little addition from the detail upset. And then it's the same for the rear discs as well. So with that complete, it's time to assemble the chassis components. It is a curbside kit, but all fairly straightforward parts. They pop into their locating places with a little bit of CA glue. So you've got the gearbox, drive shaft, transmission, the suspension struts, a couple of kind of bracing parts for the underside, and then the hubs and brake discs can be added as well. And of course, don't forget the poly caps for the wheels. So they just pop inside the hubs and then the discs pop on. So once all that's complete, it's just a case of adding a little bit of a wash to the brake discs just to make the details pop. And then it's back to me for some final thoughts about how part one has progressed on this build. So back to me. So there we have it. That is part one of the A4 video build series complete. So as you can see, the bodywork went absolutely fine. The paint from Zero Paints was absolutely spot on, no problems whatsoever. Decals from NuNu were good as usual. NuNu decals are pretty good actually. I'll give them their credit. Only criticism is there's a lot of carrier film on the Audi logos, but that's easily trimmed away. And that just stops, you know, kind of any obvious decal film from the large Audi logo on the side of the car. Chassis and running gear, fairly straightforward as curbside kit. The detail upset, the nice addition of the brake discs just adds a little bit extra to the kit. And give the style of wheels that are on it, they will be reasonably visible on the kit anyway. So yeah, so overall very, very happy with that. Brought back a lot of memories, and of course building the kit, as most of us tend to do, we tend to do a little bit of research on, you know, what we can find, and, you know, digging through the internet archives and looking for reference pictures and watching old videos. I mean, this car, in its actual heyday, in its, well, I suppose it's 1 year where it really dominated the championship in its four-wheel drive form, it was awesome. Frank Biela blew away the competition that season. Was on the podium for a significant number of the races. It was obviously kind of reined back in the following season, but was still reasonably competitive, if not championship winning material. But as ever, that's part one done, and me waffling as usual. So once again, if you like the video, pop a like, and if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. And if you have any comments on this build or anything in general, pop a comment down below. So thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in part 2 very, very soon. So yes, that's it for now. So bye from me, and see you all later. Bye bye.